Okay, we have in the studios the Director, Abuja School of Social and Political Thought and Arise Analyst, Associate Professor of Law, Sam Amadi, to look at these developing stories. Very warm welcome to Newsnight.
Thank you, Chris.
Yeah, the Humanitarian Affairs is in the news again. An interim report, leaked, the cable reporting it and the rest, and some of the recommendations is that is it scrap the ministry change the name and domicile that ministry under the coordinating minister's portfolio? Don't you think that would be too heavy for him? He's still trying to sort out the economy.
I think it's too. Again, what they're saying here is maybe first take the NSIPA program, which is the intervention program. The humanitarian service remains. Take it, put it to the minister, a new board, and the Minister of Finance control. I think it's wrong. First, let's say many people have maybe messed up in the sector, but at least some people have done well. I mean, the permanent secretary, Mr.
Olumi Waibel, fantastic technocrat and bureaucrat.
He has held strong and has provided leadership. So essentially, it's not to scramble and tarnish everybody. There are very exceptional people who are working hard like himself. The second point is that, first, the minister has the work of the Minister of Finance and Coordinated Economy. It's not the work of dispensing poverty alleviation. So I think first you're overburdening him. You create maybe another, he's going to deal with cash. That's not important. What they should do is either you allow the ministry as it is, because the idea is poverty alleviation. Humanitarian, and their connection, and then you recreate how it works. You see, the idea...
It can be rechristened Ministry of Poverty Alleviation.
And then you don't have to be carrying cash up and that. The key point here is that the funds don't need to be domiciled with them. It's not a mistake people make. Government can have a fund dedicated with either general service sector, service-wide vote, or the presidential vote, whatever it is. And then the paperwork, the criteria, the structure, the dynamics, the data, analytics for dealing with this. You see, it's just like when we're doing the SDG office. You create an SDG, they are running programs, awarding contract. The SDG is first a conceptual platform about linkages between program, outcomes, health, education. So their job is to develop this program. That's number one. Number two, if you still want to take it out, they have to create it with just like native within the presidency. It doesn't make sense to create a board and say the Minister of Finance has to head it. One, by now he's almost like struggling to cope with fiscal and monetary challenges. I mean, it's the current minister of the economy. And so I think that maybe the recommendation is self-serving, in my view. The proper thing would have been to think around programmatically. How do you make sure that this ministry focuses on the real software, identifying who is the so-called vulnerable people, having the matrix, analytics, programs. For example, interventions don't necessarily have to only come from cash. Programs, government do health program, access to health, education. How do you create affirmative action? Special interventions in health policy so that the poor in the rural areas, in the sectors not well served, underserved sectors can access free. So those are the work that requires
skills development. Why don't we have a kind of coordination with the National Directorate of Employment? Has that agency, for example, achieved its set objective when we are talking of entrepreneurship and the rest? So, the MSME,
So what I require is that first you have to have a conceptualization of what are we dealing with here. Poverty intervention has many dimensions. You dimension it. It seems to me that a unit in the presidency is much more focused because it's going to be a multi-ministerial platform. And what you're dealing with that data, look, all this is about data. The problem is that people look at the cash. So Buhari created this ministry and put it in one of his maybe very close persons. Ally. And then the person has slush fund to play with. And they get rich by it. So the attraction is about cash flow. What is supposed to be structure, input, analysis, policy. What are you intervening? Who are you intervening?
Has the data
How do you develop the intervention so that they are optimal, targeted, and create the impact desired? So I think that data combination is not good enough. I think that taking it to a new board headed by a new board is expanding the Ministry of Finance bureaucrats. So far, Mr. Wale has been struggling to cope. I mean, the incoherence in the fiscal policy, we've not got, we are still dealing with a lot, and they're basically not doing enough, doing well. So to saddle him with this cash, and then it translates to supervising this,
dispensing cash
of
and the
cash
rest,
and all that.
the relief.
That's not what the Minister of Finance should be doing at this point. So I think either you create that Minister of Poverty, reduce access to free cash, create multiple platforms of digitalized open portal for clearance, so everybody knows who gets what when it moves. That may be better, or still better, go to the presidency and create a special unit.
Don't forget that you have the school feeding program under this humanitarian affairs.
Too many programmatic things that the Minister of Finance in Nigeria, today Nigeria, I mean, this is the biggest monetary fiscal crisis we are facing. Revenue shortfall, you're talking about Forex, almost like
so he should concern himself.
That's what's supposed to focus on. He shouldn't head a platform dealing with how to deal with poverty, transfer cash to Nigerians, school feeding. That's not what we should be dealing with. So I'm in support of recreating that ministry, or essentially creating the intervention unit in the presidency to manage it and then ensure that it's digitalized in a way that there's no discretion here. Entitlements are clear on the platform. Everybody can access it. So you click it, you know who gets what when. And those cash can move from other sectors. So you can do it two ways. You do the paperwork, somebody else does the cash transfer. And that's really how you create accountability. It doesn't happen that the ministry in charge of doing the work transfers the cash. So the cash sits somewhere, the platform is open, everybody can see it, we can audit it real time. That's, but essentially, government seems to struggle with technology. We saw with election, nobody likes technology. But if you bring real technology, real time, get data right, and do transfers, we don't need to struggle with somebody.
It would have saved us all.
Yes, I would have somebody carrying 5 billion,
and the rest,
So once you do that, leave that ministry the way it is. I wouldn't have created a ministry. We have created a program, because really sometimes this ministry suggests
strengthening the program within the ministry. You can rechristen the name.
Exactly. So the program is what's matter, not the ministry. It's a program that needs to be focused, re-engineered, restructured, and let it drive with clear oversight and open transparency.
Let's look at the link very quickly. Railway development between the northeast and the southeast. That has been moribund for close to 40, 50 years now. There is hope that it's coming up in 3 weeks.
I think we have to commend Jonathan Buhari and now Tinubu for this rail development. Look, that's what you have done first, from 1960s to date. Rail is perhaps the cheapest and most functional intrastate travel that will help a lot. I mean, with goods, with human beings. And if you don't build interstate travel to be seamless and cost efficient, you are not going to have real development. Think around, sometimes the cost of landing containers into Nigeria is cheaper than from Dubai or from China. Maybe cheaper, almost the same, from moving them to inland to from Lagos ports, maybe to somewhere like Sokoto or somewhere like Enugu or Imo.
And they are going by road.
And they're going by road, and the cost is now high, and the goods are going to be more expensive. So I think that the strategic linkage of these major cities through rail is part of
and
what...
through Aba again.
Exactly.
Aba is in the news, with all the geometric power station and the rest.
Aba is trying to do their own so-called... But I think they should be realistic. The federal rail should work. They should spur off again. I chair the Senate Committee on Design, the National Transport Commission Act. The bill was sent, they didn't sign it. They need a transport commission to coordinate the economic regulation of this both rail, road, because that's where you get investment. So I think good idea to link the country by rail.
Fantastic. Okay, let's leave it there for a while. Associate Professor Sam Amadi will be back after we'll go on this break and continue the discuss. And when we return, the discussion continues with Dr. Sam Amadi. Stay with us. You're welcome back, and you're still watching Newsnight. We're live from Nigeria's capital in Abuja. I'm Christian Ogodo. Thanks for staying with us. Nobel laureate Professor Wale Soyinka is calling for the reconfiguration and decentralization of the country, saying there are necessary steps towards national progress. Wole Soyinka made this known at the Punch newspaper 50th anniversary lecture, which held recently in Lagos. And correspondent Ni Oyelowo has details.
The Punch, a 50th anniversary lecture titled Recovering the Narrative, delivered by Professor Wole Soyinka, was received with rapt attention by attendees. He admonished the critical role the print media plays, but warned it needs to clean up its act, especially the issue of language usage, which can be diminished, resulting in distortion of scenarios, if not properly presented. Professor Soyinka says humanity can be transformed if language is used correctly. It enables free flow of information when facts are presented clearly.
Recovering the narrative. I begin by pleading guilty to an obsessive problem. It's called media language. As one who is routinely traumatized by encountering his own words reworked into imagined equivalents, duly enhanced and augmented, even with the best and honest intentions, but which actually end up reading the opposite of intent, that obsession with media language is quite understandable. Fortunately, the preliminary we're engaged in now is not personalized, so I shall proceed. As gentle as I can and through examples from the press itself on what is reported and how, to induct you into how the national psyche can actually be programmed, rewired, so to speak, into absorbing the freakish, the grotesque into its digestive system, so that it becomes assimilated as the norm.
Founded in March 1973, Punch newspaper clocked 50 on March 18th last year, but its board of directors moved the 50th anniversary celebration to this year because the anniversary month fell within an election month and year.
50 years is no mean feat, and we are grateful to all our long-standing partners and audiences for the journey so far. The title of today's lecture, Recovering the Narrative, is not just a theme, it's a call to action. It is a rallying cry for the media and responsible actors to reclaim their rightful place as the guardians of facts, truth, and justice, and the voice of the people. This is so because in a world inundated with information, the power to shape narratives is a formidable responsibility and one that should not be taken lightly.
Punch's anniversary is being marked with the 40th anniversary of the passing of its founding chairman, the late Chief James Olubunmi Aboderin, who died on February 28, 1984, at the age of 50.
Let us please talk about all those good things happening in this country. It's not all bad story all the time. The National Bureau of Statistics only recently said that for the first time in a very long time, we are seeing capital import improving by about 66%. Now, if you want to find reason why fuel subsidy has to go, one reason is that our consumption has gone down by over 1 billion liters. That's what the NBS, National Bureau of Statistics, said. Over 1 billion liters. So where were those liters going? Where were they going before?
Wrapping up his narrative, Professor Soyinka says, the definition of a nation is not an absolute one. It is a constant work in progress and not sacrosanct. Ni Below, Arise News.
All right, thanks very much, Ni. And like I said, the Associate Professor of Law, Dr. Sam Amadi, is still with us. Doc, let's look at the issue Wole Soyinka raised before I come to, your forte, which is electricity generation in Nigeria. Restructuring is being a swan song in Nigeria. And remember, before Tinubu became president, he held tenaciously to it. But we're not hearing, there's no whisper of, whether looking at the 2014 Jonathan's report or the El Rufai's report on restructuring too.
I think well, one can say that maybe the president has somewhat indirectly kicked it by saying state police negotiate with the state governors. But, but it's much bigger than that. And Soyinka ended up saying, look, if the country need to break up or whatever for justice to be done, let it be so. I mean, so the fatalism that we can't reform this country is not true. And you look at the 61 legislators who proposed a shift to parliamentarism a few days ago and a few weeks ago, and also in 2013, 71 of them brought the same motion. It didn't pass before the end of that session. This is when we were young students fighting Abuja. We had the Akabashoro led us in national conference. Struggle. The late
former president of the NBA.
So it has been an NBA issue. It has been, at that time, the wave of democratization across West Africa. Niger had, Benin Republic had, with a very massive and almost brutal fight for constitutional conference. I think we need to come back and say, okay, first, let's start with rigorous discussion around it. Abacha, as bad as people he was really, gave us also a very innovative constitution that didn't pass, which, in my view, I did a lot of research on that. Very good constitution, talking about 6 multiple presidency zones. Multiple presidency, exactly. And he talked about power shifts, 5 years or so. So you have gone around by now. Again, I think that Abuja School, by this Friday, we're going to have a dialogue on this move to parliamentarism and putting all these issues. A country, you may not adopt a change, but you should be thinking about change. You should be struggling, researching, asking questions. There's evidence in social and political science that institutions and structure determine stability to a large extent. So people talk about, oh, Nigerian politicians are bad people. But look, institutions constrain, they enable. So if you have good structure, whether it's presidential, parliament, whatever works, regional, state, local government, autonomy, they constrain bad behavior, they could enable good behavior. So I think that's a consensus that we have a bad structure. But whether that is the only reason for our failure is a difficult argument. But it's a contributing reason for the failure. And so there's now a consensus that we should seek to look again at our structure. Now, National Assembly is going to, just last Friday, I think, or Thursday, they had flagged off their constitutional reform. But the constitutional reform is too legislative. It should be first discursive. People gather and discuss. And I think that's what we want to do at Abuja School to help the 61 legislators. And they're ready. We say, first have a conversation with Nigeria. Don't just rush to bring some fake experts to draft bills and say, this is for amendment. That's not the point. It's now time to get social scientists, get scholars, get media experts, get political activists to now begin to ask 3 questions.
Traditional rulers.
Everybody, church, religious leaders, traditional rulers, even the unemployed people. I mean, the key point is framing. Who frames the discourse? First, how good is our institution? Is there evidence that shows that clearly parliamentary system has been more stable globally? I mean, if you look at the countries of the world, only Nigeria and the US, and maybe 1 or 2 countries, practice this kind of pure presidential system of government. Whether it's Germany, Israel, France, you see, even Ghana has some kind of mixture of presidency, parliament, a little bit more robust. So history shows clear that when you have parliamentary system, you will likely have more consensus, structure for consensus, accountability, check and balance that's institutionalized. The present system requires enlightened citizenship. We're not there. It requires some degree of what you call civil religion. That means the discourse of politics, the value system. It requires some robust economy. So the chief executive sits there, and through this accountability platform, it can be checked. But we now have a system that's neither development-oriented nor democratic. So the question is, can we have the good sense to say why the governors and the govern? Can we have a conversation around? And that's what Soyinka is trying to say, in my view. And that's what this 61 legislators in the National Assembly are trying to say. And that's what Abuja School on Friday is going to bring people to say, can't we rethink? We don't need to sign off any project now, but we can rethink this argument and get back to say, okay, fine, it doesn't make sense, it makes sense. Let's pay attention to reflection and public discourse. Okay, let's go to your forte now. The issue of power generation in Nigeria in the last 25, 30 years. It's
4,000, 5,000, 2,000, 1,000, system collapse and the rest. In Abuja, it's been hell-over of a time for the citizens, everybody. I mean, it's like, look, there's no power agency here, and the minister is worried, summoning two of the discos, Abuja and Ibadan. What is going on?
I think what's going on is the same structural frailty. Again, it can be worse or more. I mean, I remember when we were there, we hit sometimes 5,000 megawatts, briefly, momentarily. We had longer hours. But the point is, the quality of leadership matters. Nigeria is still going to have to struggle with electricity for some time. I mean, several issues. You're going to fix transmission. It will take some consistent, prudent, and targeted investment to improve distribution capacity. You're going to ramp up tariffs. The socioeconomic condition is very bad for tariff increase. So I understand government holding back. You're going to improve tariff. You're going to improve metering. You're going to improve gas supply. You're going to improve the capacity for recovery of funds. But the key point here is, should the minister be the one summoning regulated entities? Now that's where the key point is. We're running this market as if there's no regulator. The minister should have told the regulator, what are you doing?
Yeah.
They would have summoned, when we're there, we summoned the discos and talked to them. That's their job. It's the job of regulator to say, Abuja Disco, TCN.
Somebody is sleeping somewhere.
Come and explain. Why do you have? So they will technically know that whether it is just emergency, whether something, if there's gross inefficiency, they penalize them. So the idea that it looks great that the minister is responsive, but it's a shading of the regulator, because that's actually the regulator. Look, these companies can say, we'll meet the minister, for example, and they didn't contravene any license condition because they are not the ones answering to the minister. The minister speaks to the regulator and communicates government disapproval of the status quo. The regulator picks it up and interfaces with the operators and says, look, you guys have to, today, 24 hours to ramp up or we deal with you. When I was at a point, look, the VP will call CEOs, and I issued an order. I said, any CEO who goes to Villa again and meet me, I will fire you. They should be talking to the regular. The banker, how many times does the Minister of Finance call bank chiefs? He is a CBN governor who talks to the bank chief. The CBN governor understands the fiscal policy side of things and the monetary policy. So I think that the minister should hold regulators' leg in the fire, and they themselves will hold the operators put in the fire. And that's how the system works. So we've decoupled things, and we're doing this in a wrong way, and passion without understanding, and things go off the way. So the minister is right to say, oh, things are bad. Look, I've not had consistent 2 minutes power in the place I live. Every time comes in, so we are generally on gen. So the minister is right to say, what's going on here? I need an explanation. But the procedure is the natural way. Absolutely. So if the discourse say, we're not going to come, and then it's really a market, it's a political risk. If the minister will summon them and maybe get angry with them, what will he do? Fire them, remove their license? But the regulator is the one who has the power to fire them, who has the power to threaten them with license removal. That's how this market works. And if you follow that way, it might look like procedural, but that's really how you get it fixed.
All right. Thank you so very much, Associate Professor of Law Sam Amadi, for coming to shed light on those developing stories on Newsnight. Thank you very much.